turn that on? Thank you.
Before.
Now you have your very own microphone. Have the floor. We good? All right, we'll call the meeting to order. We'll start with the pledge. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Getting started tonight, as usual, we will review and sign payroll and accounts payable for the period ending 11/11. We had payroll in the amount of $28,965.33. We had accounts payable in the amount of $28,821.28. We also made an ACH payment to New Hampshire Retirement of $43,232.99. Set?
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a nice night. I'll take a motion for approval of this week's consent agenda.
Move. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I'm an aye, so we'll pass the consent agenda. This week, the consent agenda includes public minutes from 11/7, non-public minutes from 11/7, which are sealed, the rec manifest, the treasurer's report, and building permits. We'll now open up public comment at 6:02. As usual, we'll ask folks to come up towards the front so the microphone can pick them up. Anyone interested in public comment? Come on up. Just gonna close the door. Got it.
Okay. You can stand too if you like.
I don't know.
All right, if you could start with your name and address, please.
Robert Spann, 31 Peabody Drive in Brentwood.
Welcome back.
Thank you. I just wanted to, I don't think that the subject of the dam is on the agenda tonight, but I wanted to just update the select board on the fact that I had, as I mentioned last week, I filed a public records request with the town of Exeter on Monday, 2 weeks ago. No, I'm sorry, 1 week ago. The 6th or the 7th, whatever date that was. And yesterday, which was the end of the 5-day notice period that they're supposed to respond in, I got a letter from the town saying they would produce the documents on the 20th of November, which is next Monday. So one might think they're taking their time, but I did ask for a lot of stuff, so I know it takes time to compile that. And so that's just what I wanted to update the board on. I don't have any further information about the dam. There will be, as a reminder, there's a meeting on Thursday of the River Advisory Committee in Exeter at 3 o'clock.
And we are going to touch on this issue during committee updates because we have a communication from the Conservation Committee.
Okay, so I don't need to come up after Bob?
You don't. I think if you want to come up maybe during that conversation, I think
Okay.
we'll discuss it during conservation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yep, thank you. Any other public comment? Liz, come on up.
Hi, Liz Freer, South Road. I was here last time when the library was presenting, and I'm very impressed with all the fundraising they have done, having been the person that tabled it because it wasn't ready. I think it's getting to be ready. However, they were $50,000 short, and I had a partial solution to the $50,000. It was for the engineering that I guess I'd already spent. It just wasn't tallied right. I noticed that you had said originally they were gonna get something like 130,000 for ARPA.
That
And
had
then-
been our just rough approximation that we thought might be needed.
Okay, so if you did their 117 that was in the most recent, and that would give 13 left over, right? And then there was also some talk about we wouldn't need all the contingency and all the tables and chairs and all the outside accoutrements. That would be wonderful to have in the future, but maybe not this moment. And I was thinking, if you got it down to, or if the library got it down to, and the select board got it down to needing 20 or 30,000, you could just put something in the newsletter asking for donations. Like, it's not that many people. Like, if 30 people gave $1,000, that would be $30,000, you know?
Sure.
If 60 people gave, you know, 500, it's not really that much money, right? And I'd be happy to give something, so I would, and then you could have just a pool of, you know, could be anonymous or not anonymous, but it would be another thing that wouldn't be coming from
Sure.
taxpayer money or people that couldn't afford it, and it would still be going to the greater good of the, so I was hoping that may be an idea that they haven't tried yet.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else interested in public comment? All right, seeing none, we'll close public comment at 6:06 and move on to discussion action items. The first thing that we're doing tonight is going over budgets. We have 7 different budgets, and the first are town clerk, tax collector, election, town meeting. I think are all kind of lumped together. So come on up and we'll talk about those.
Do you have a preference?
We have, looks like town clerk first, then tax collector, then meeting, then elections.
Okay.
All right, you have the floor.
So, did you have questions about what I sent you? Or do you just want me to go over it?
Maybe I can just clarify for the board that this, especially the town clerk and the election part of the budget is variable year to year based on how many elections we have. In this coming year, we have the maximum possible number of elections that we could have in one year.
We hope, yes.
We hope. Knock on wood. So that was a question I had for Daphne, was about some of the hours being upshifted for some of the employees is directly a reflection of the number of elections that we have this coming year. So this budget is going up for that reason and then would go back down in a following year. So that
The
was
following year will be back to what we had this year, which was 1 election plus town meeting.
So I think most of your increases and your salary increases are all based on that need to up staff for the heavy election year. correct?
Yes. And then there's increase in the hotel registrations, for the conferences, registration costs for our training. All of those prices have increased this year. I did remove the postage line out of my budget. That will be going into the regular town budget because we don't really separate it, so there's no reason for it to be in my budget. The office supplies, that's just an increase for the monthly reminders, and the dog licenses, the prices went up
I'm sorry, what was the increase?
right here.
2.79,
Nope.
right at the bottom of that first page.
All right.
And Daphne, your budget is basically for Paul's understanding, kind of split, right, between the tax collector and the
Yes.
town clerk. So some of the salaries and wages are basically split
They're just
down the
splitting
middle.
half, right.
Because the same people do all of those jobs.
What are the conventions?
The conference, the town clerk conference that I have to go to, that I should be able to bring my deputy to, but because the prices increased, it was just me.
Where is that?
This year, town clerk was in Attitash.
Okay.
Is that the actual town? No, it's the Attitash ski
Yeah.
resort place. That's
Yeah.
where the town clerk one was, yes.
Used to always be at the red jacket until it got burnt down.
Until it caught on
Yes.
fire, right?
Yeah.
Yes. This one was
rates are
definitely an
down now.
upgrade. What?
The rates are down.
The rates are down.
It's a little drafty.
That's not very nice.
Any questions
true.
from others about this budget? and we should vote on these individually, right, even though they're kind of split. Is anyone interested in making a motion for the 2024 town clerk budget?
Make a motion for 76,609.76, an increase of 2,079 or 41. Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
And I'm an aye, so that passes 4-0.
You guys are still employed.
Moving on to the tax collector part of the budget.
Same thing with the wages. Again, the same thing, the increase in the hotel registration and the professional training. Those were the only increases there. I don't have postage in this one, so nothing came out of this one.
And remind us kind of how it splits, so there's like a convention line in this budget and a convention line in the other budget.
Because they're completely separate conferences.
Gotcha.
So the tax collector conference is at the North Conway Grand Hotel,
Gotcha.
in case you were wondering.
I want to go.
I think you should.
That's an offer.
The
on table.
information,
Be careful.
might
Is
be
an
a
offer on the
little
table.
boring, but
What you
you're
offer.
welcome to come to it.
So once again, the biggest changes here are the increase in weeks for
Yes.
the deputy and the office clerk, which are about 13%, 10% each. Balanced out with the rest of the budget, the suggested budget of 77,708.76 is an increase of 8.35%, with a difference of 5,988.41. Questions or concerns from the board?
So that amount of increase for, was attributable for the
Because, yep,
deputy and office clerk.
yep, and the registration costs, and
Right. No, I'm just
Conference,
wondering
yeah.
why we were looking
it's
at.
exactly the same as the town clerk one.
The town
Tech-
clerk,
Oh, I see.
Technically, town clerk would have been
Yeah.
$6,000, but we removed the $4,000 postage, so
Yeah, yeah.
They would have been pretty close to exactly the same. By the way, your coffee smells amazing.
is it the caramel
Wow.
one?
Huh?
Is it the caramel one?
Yeah,
It is.
Any questions or
I know.
changes people see that need for this budget?
I move 77,708.76, increase of 5,988.41.
Is there a second for that budget?
Yeah. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And I'm an aye, so that's a pass.
Now, I don't want anyone to panic, okay? This is because there's 5 elections, the 4 elections plus town meeting. We only had 1 election this year and 1 town meeting. So you're looking at the increase of the 2 moderators for 5 elections. If we just want to talk town meeting, is that considered a separate? That's separate, so that's just what that one is. So the increase there is just the fact that there's 5 elections.
The town report is the same, everything else is the same. It's just, and they're paid a fixed rate per election, correct?
Yes, they
Yep.
are, yep.
Yep, so this is a pretty straightforward increase.
Mhm.
And obviously, it's a big increase just because of the number of elections, so it's a 42.8% increase because of the election year.
Move $4,001.
Second.
All in favor of the $4,001 town meeting budget?
Aye.
I'll second.
Aye.
Aye.
And I'm an aye, so that's a pass. And then elections.
So now the elections, we chose last year, I believe we voted on the fact that the ballot clerks would be paid an hourly wage as opposed to a stipend, depending on, because some people don't stay the whole day, they should get paid hourly. So that's in there. We have 12 ballot clerks, 12 people that work at $10 an hour for 4 elections, because they don't work town meeting. And I did put in, if they all stayed the whole 15 hours. So we make sure that we have enough money in there for all of them. That's what that increase is. The 3 supervisors for 5 elections. The meals and service, the increase in the price for meals went up to $500. So that's 4 elections because we don't eat at town meeting. Well, we eat, but we don't provide meals. And then the biggest one is the general supplies for the new election machine. We will probably not be forced to use it this coming year. We might be, we might not be, we don't know yet. The price for the machine is anywhere between $7,000 and $10,000. There's 2 different machines up for consideration that I would encourage the town folks to go to look at the demonstrations. And what I will do is, as soon as I get information about the demonstrations, is post that on our Facebook page as well as the town website. Because the town will have to vote on which ones they want to use.
And that would be at town meeting, we would be voting on that, or how, or the select board would vote on that?
I think
How
that
does
the
play out?
select board can vote on it, but it's totally up to you. I think if you want to bring it to town meeting as a warrant article, regardless, we have to get the new machine. It's not a question of whether we want to or not. We're gonna have to get it.
By when?
By the following year, the March meeting, the
March
following year.
25, we have to have a new one in place by then.
You will definitely have to have it by then,
And which machine are you talking about, the counter? Like
the
what it-
counter. Yeah.
Big black one.
LHS has a new one coming out, and there's another company, I don't remember what the name of it is, and they have one. Those 2 machines have been initially approved by the state. There's some laws that need to change for some of the machines. So like I said, I would definitely encourage it's open to the public. People can go and check out these machines and put their hands on it and make up stories about it. I don't know. So
What kind of a time frame do you think that will occur, and that like we'll need to make a decision about which one to buy?
we'd have to just do it before the town election the following year.
Okay.
We'd have to have it in and ready to go. I would prefer, and this is just me personally, this is not my position. Me personally, as a resident and somebody that touches the machine, would not really want to have a new one at the presidential election.
Sure.
To be honest, that would suck, because if anything is strange, that's when it would happen. So we're good for this coming year, but we need to probably buy it this year.
And the budgeting up to 10,000 would cover us for either one that we select?
Mhm.
Other questions for Daphne about elections?
Is that 10,000 something we could, do we have any opera funds left?
We do.
That may be a good use of some of the opera funds.
Could be.
So that's something, yeah, you guys would
That's
have to
another
vote on.
option, that we could just take it out of the budget, and, you know, we have quite a bit of ARPA funds because we underspent them on the fire position. You'd still, I mean, we know it's a cost that's coming down the road that we are gonna pay for one way or another.
We do know, we don't know the exact, I just know it's not gonna be above 10,000, they've said,
Okay.
so, somewhere between 7 and 10.
What do the other folks think about maybe pulling that out and just kind of earmarking some ARPA for that?
Good idea.
Seems to make sense. Okay, you'd be okay with that?
Mm.
Okay. She's like, as long as there's money, I'm good.
I'll move the updated budget of 17,501.
Is there a second on that?
Yeah, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I'm an aye, so that's a pass. So maybe you can just keep us posted on like how the public could get involved in that, and then we could think about at the board level how we want to involve the public in that decision.
Yes, and one other thing, if I can just quickly say, tomorrow the Secretary of State is announcing the primary date
Finally.
in big pomp and circumstance, so very excited about that.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next we have conservation.
Thank you, I appreciate the chance to do this. It's been a learning experience. I wanted to thank Karen for some help in this process, because it was a mystery to me at first, but I wanted to give you some background. I don't know if you're all familiar with the budget. I am aware in your packet that there's misinformation. The percentage of calculation, Karen and I worked on that yesterday, and I forgot to change that. So in preparation for this budget, I asked Karen for all the details of 20, 21, 22, so that I'd be familiar with how money was expended, what areas, what line items, and the expenditures, where they went. The 221 budget, if you note, was reduced by $6,000 to $13,652 from the 2020 level because the volunteers in Concom started doing the monitoring. So they had saved the town money in the monitoring process. And right now, Lise has sent out notices to all the easement holders that we're going to start the process for 2023. So we're accelerating that a little bit and informing the owners in advance so that if they'd like to be present and be part of that monitoring, they will be available. So she's monitoring that right now. In 2023, the Concom budget has been level funded. As I said, it stayed at $13,652 since 2021. Since 2021, Concom has returned between 97 and 80% to the general fund each budget year. So it totaled about $42,000 that has gone back into the general fund since 2021. Factors that had an impact on our modest budget over the last 3 years, certainly COVID, no public events, scaled down activities. Public events were at a minimum. There was no bond to work with until 2022, and only one property was closed. As far as I know, I believe it was only the game farm that closed from that in that period. So those are the background factors. If you look at your budget sheet, your worksheet, pretty much the same line items we've used in the past. The initial change is under professional training because I feel all of us need to do a little bit more education and learn more about the process. So I increased that by $200. That's about a 1.46 increase. I would like members and alternates and the public to be more educated about what conservation means and how we move forward with this. Whether we have training sessions or workshops here or online programs, something to do more education. So that was my initial budget increase. The next increase is based on a suggestion or a request that came forward this summer that was made to hire a consultant to help us with this process. Now we have this $3 million bond hanging over us, and we would like to have a consultant available to work with us on a case-by-case basis, not a full-time employee, not a regular session, but when that person is needed, when a property comes online. That person would work with Concom easements that are pursued and ultimately presented to the Select Board and the town for approval. This kind of knowledge requires a special set of skills, familiarity with the RSAs, with how conservation property is monitored, the process, working with the landowner, timeline, sending out RFPs to approved appraisers and surveys as needed, deeds, plus the time to follow through on all of these necessary steps to get the process off the ground. To that end, I have requested $10,000 to be added to the budget to be used for consultant fees. At Karen's suggestion, we placed it under the audit line because there's no line for consultant in our budget. Maybe that needs to be changed next year so that accommodates any other line items that may come up. The other option was to put that in the conservation fund, but that money's going to come out of the same bucket at the end of the year anyway, whether you reimburse the conservation fund or have it in a consultant line. Right now, there are 2 properties in the pipeline for 2024. I wasn't sure how much the conservation fund might be depleted with processing those. And so this additional amount of $10,000 requests the total budget increase of 57.23%, and the total budget request would be $23,862. That represents, as I said, 57.23%. I had to relearn how to do calculations of percentages in this time. So we have, as you may have been told before, that Mark Young interviewed 2 consultants over the summer before he stepped down. And I have since been in touch with one of them to try to set up a time to work with that person to develop what this role would be. We've got a tentative job description of what a consultant would do, the role that person would serve. And we're going to talk about that next week and present it to the Conservation Board. So that's what I have done in the last 10 days. And if there are any questions, be happy to go over any of this.
Karen, could we like create a 120 line for like stipend consultant?
Sure.
That would make more
An
sense than
administration line?
being under audit expense.
Right, we didn't know where to put it because there
What
was
was
not
the,
on.
so the $7,000 audit expense that was already in there that wasn't expended, what was that intended for?
That's a good question because Karen and I wrestled with that. We weren't quite sure if it was easements that were still going to be monitored or not. It's back as far as 2019 in the budget.
But
Was it ever
hasn't-
spent?
Hasn't been spent. The easement budget has been spent 1 year. There's one property that is monitored by the Forest Society on an every 3-year basis. So in 2021, that money was expended. I assume it's going to be expended in 2024 as well.
So what was your anticipated, was it 17 for consultant or was it 10?
10, I just could, the 7 was in there and we put the 10 in there with the 7.
No, didn't we have a conversation just a couple weeks ago with this board about us probably not needing a consultant? So I guess I'm a little confused.
I didn't hear that.
Who did we have that conversation with?
That was probably when I wasn't here, when CELT came in, because CELT does a lot of the
Right,
stuff, but I think, well, I think CELT's doing a good job, they're also busy.
Yep.
They've told us on a couple of our properties that they just don't have time to get to some of the stuff, so.
Actually, I met with Jeremy Luigi and Dexter and Charlton Swayze today. We talked about the process for the Swayze property, and Jeremy admitted that he cannot get to their property maybe January and what the process would unfold on there. He says he has so many projects, they only have two land consultants in CELT, and they are so booked up that the timelines are moving forward so far into the future.
I think you're right. I think it was when Bob Stevens was here presenting the Fuller property that he had said that we shouldn't need a consultant if we had CELT involved in a project. But if CELT or the Land Trust or
Yeah.
some other group was not involved, then we
Right.
needed that skill
Right.
set.
Right,
So this is sort of a buffer just in case we
Yes.
need that person.
yes.
Okay.
And the
Could that-
figure I'm using is based on what Mark Young shared with the shared with Bob and me on an informal basis after the interviews, when talking to people approximately how much time or how much money would be involved in processing from start to finish of a conservation, because that could take more than a year. So an amount, just I'm basing this on possibly 2 properties.
Personally, I don't know that I'm ready to vote yes on 10,000 for this purpose, based on everything I've heard.
Well, I
through
guess
Conversation.
a follow-up question I have about that is, if we end up needing to use a consultant, can we pull the consultant fee out of the conservation fund, given that it's being used towards using the bond?
Yes, you would just need to post a public hearing before expending
Yeah.
those
Right.
funds.
Yeah, the conservation fund can be used for appraisals, surveys, legal expenses, but
Right.
I didn't see consultant
Do you
or
think that
staff.
would be appropriate? Because that would be a way to just keep it out of the budget and just put it, let the Conservation Commission use their conservation funds, which is currently at 75,000, right?
I think any of the services that you would use in conjunction with acquiring a property and its conservation rights, I think would
Would fall
qualify.
under that.
So if it comes out of the conservation fund, what happens to replenish that fund at the end of budget year '24? If we
It
That's
would-
your
spend that down,
900
because we're
line
gonna spend
item.
it down for Swayze and Fuller, there's gonna be money taken out of there for
Yep.
2 properties already.
And then it would be reallocated and rebudgeted in the 900 line in the following budget season.
300.
It basically, to your point, it's the same taxpayer dollars.
Yeah,
It's just that the 75K has already been raised and is sitting there. And if you're budgeting for something that you may or may not spend, it might make more sense to the taxpayer's pocketbook to say, well, if we end up spending it, we'll take it out of the 75K and then we'll reimburse it. The taxpayers will have to reimburse it, because we do
so they'll
have
be
that.
aware of that,
That
yes.
fund is just
Yeah.
sitting there. And I don't think I'm seeing here 0 in this year actual for for how much we spent out of that fund, right?
I don't think we've spent anything out of there in the last 2 years.
Can you
No, I didn't
clarify
see
the
anything.
75K that you're,
Yeah, so
Referencing
there
tonight.
is a fund, I don't know the exact title of the fund, I think it's Conservation.
Conservation Fund.
Fund, I think
Yeah.
it is just the
Yes, just
Conservation
that.
Fund.
It's a revolving fund, so it's
Revolving
non-lapsing.
And when we charge land use fee change charges, that money goes into that fund. And at one point, a number of years ago, right, there was a negotiation that occurred because that fund was getting quite large and wasn't being spent down, so wasn't being returned to the taxpayers. So the Select Board and Conservation Committee had a kind of meeting of the minds about it and decided to set it at 75K, and that it will stay that way at all times and can be used for any properties that you're gonna try to use as a conservation through the bonds. And then as that gets below 75, it would go into the following year's budget to replenish it back up to 75. And any money, although it may not even need to, right? If we get more land use fees, you might not even need to take that out of taxpayer money, but if it needed to. But that way, any extra money that comes in from those change fees goes back into the general fund and can go back to the taxpayer. So it's just a change in how that was done, years ago, I think.
and land use fees, meaning like what?
When you take land out of current use, you charge them a land use change tax fee, which is 10% of the market value when it's removed and developed.
So we've had like quite a few of those from Three Ponds in the past year or two, as they've taken all of those out to start building.
Mill Road property will have a lot.
Right. So actually, to that point, we may not even need to go back to the taxpayers, right? Because that's gonna fill itself,
Well, no, you would
Back up.
still raise it here and then the revenue side. would
transfer it,
be
we would just transfer it over.
So one question about the conservation fund. If we can take it for, we can use it for surveys or appraisals, legal fees. You said, Karen, something about a public meeting to inform, about using any of that. I read in the
Yes.
manual, it said we didn't need to have any permission or any public meeting for
A
that.
public hearing in regards to spending for conservation, for land acquisition requires a public hearing.
But even to take it out of the conservation fund, I thought
Yes.
it wasn't necessary.
It's not necessary for the bond money because the bond was already voted at town
Right.
meeting. But the conservation fund is a separate fund, and so if you
Right.
want to expend those funds for that purpose,
Yeah,
you need to post a public hearing and just have a quick,
It's just part of your meeting.
but it could be part of the
Regular
meeting.
oh yeah,
It
you
could
would
just
have,
be part of a
Yeah.
regular
Yeah,
monthly meeting.
formality.
yeah,
Okay,
it's just a separate notice in
not
the
a separate,
newspaper.
okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
But since what I'm hearing about some of the items in your budget is they're a little uncertain. So it might be a good use of that fund, because then we could always fill it up afterwards. Because I'm assuming that the 3,500 easement monitoring that wasn't spent this year is money that we had previously paid out to a contractor to do our easement, but now the town
No,
members have been
that
doing it, correct?
particular that particular easement, I think is the Forest Society, and last year
Oh, that's a
was
separate one?
like $2,500. In 2021, it was $2,500, and they do it every 3 years, so it would be due again in 2024
Does that
for
sound
this
right?
budget year.
In historical notes, I have said that both of those fees are paid to South. That may have changed with the
Yeah.
different chairs over the
Yeah.
years.
And that an easement monitoring fee, it would not make sense to take out of the conservation fund, right? Because that's kind of a separate,
that's a
like, cost of
routine
doing
expense.
business, routine
Yeah.
expense. So maybe, it sounds like maybe we need some clarity on the 7,000 audit versus the 3,500 easement. And you're saying in the past, those all went to sell
To South.
Well, in the past, you said audit hasn't been spent in how many years?
the 7,000 one.
Hasn't been spent in a few years. Just the notes from the last 3 budget seasons say that's what it was
It wasn't
appropriated to.
spent in 19, I think, and that's when the change happened, when we started doing the monitoring.
Yep.
So if we can find out those details, that would be very helpful.
We might want to just clarify, because I
Yeah.
certainly, if right now we are lucky enough to have town volunteers that are doing something for us, but if that were to change.
Might not last, that exactly.
Right, then we need at least $1 in this line item so we can make sure those people get paid. But I think we need to clarify between the 7 and the 3,500 what those dollars, because we haven't spent in either one of those this past year.
Nope.
Maybe can we just try to clarify what those really
We
are?
probably will spend the 3,500 for
Okay.
that one property that is rotating through the.
But the 7,000 is potentially not needed.
And Becky, as far as the statute is for the conservation fund,
Yep,
it authorizes the Conservation Commission to expend funds for contributions to qualified organizations for the purpose of property interest or facilitating transactions related thereto. so
So
any
a consultant
services
would fall
related
into
to
that.
that.
Yeah, something follows that, okay.
So just to summarize some of the things that we were talking about here, the 301 line item, we're thinking of taking the 10,000 out of that and having that be utilized by the conservation fund. The other 7,000, we're thinking we might be able to drop that down to $1 if we don't need it.
Wait, explain that again, go over that again, please.
So the 500 for training, I think that sounds perfectly reasonable. The 301 line item that was at 7,000 that you were requesting to go up
Yeah.
to 17,000.
Yeah,
I think what we're all talking about here is maybe pulling your 10,000 out of the
Okay.
budget and having that just be a separate thing that conservation manages
Okay.
through the fund. And then the 7,000 sounds like potentially that's not needed to budget for that, but we need to maybe just clarify that. We might wanna just table this till next week. Because it's possible that we could drop that 7,000 down to $1 placeholder, but that maybe it's the 3,500 one that we should keep, but I think we need some clarity on that, because I don't want you to end
I'm
up with
hesitant,
bills
yeah,
that
I'm hesitant to do
we can't
that.
pay. But if we haven't expended that 7,000 in years, then it's unclear what we're budgeting for there.
Maybe we should go back a little bit before 20 to find out how it was spent.
And remember, even if you're budgeted at $1 and something comes up and your volunteers aren't able, like, we can find a way to shift, line items in the budget or from the general fund to
In
make
the
sure
general
people get
fund?
paid. And then I think your dues are the same, postage, all of
Yep.
those are the
Yep.
same. The 900 line item, Karen, that we could drop to $1, right? Because we don't have to pay anything back to appropriation, so that's just a historical number that was
Yep.
in there.
Ah,
So that one can drop to 1.
Didn't know that. It's historical.
So do we think we can probably get a satisfactory answer on those two, the 301 and 302 line?
We can't, Becky, do you have the, account details for that with you, or no?
Yes, going to 20, I do. The
And
details.
none of that money was spent?
I don't
in
think
that
so,
301 line?
because I've got the total budget, the amount spent that year, and what percentage was returned to the town.
You haven't spent it in 3 years. You
I
would
think
have noticed
dropping
it by
that to
now if you
1.
needed the money.
Yeah. How does the board feel about maybe dropping that 301 line item down to 1, but leaving the 302 at 3,500 to give them some wiggle room if they need to pay for easement monitoring?
We don't know what easement monitoring for that one property will cost this year. I'm working with numbers from 3 years ago.
Okay.
So it may be more than the 2,500 that
Okay.
was in 2021.
But it's at 3,500 is in the budget.
I would like to come back after these issues are resolved
Sure.
and present the budget again if there's time in the schedule next week.
Is everybody comfortable with
We'll
just
have more
tabling that for now?
detail.
Can I just make a differing opinion for a minute?
Please?
I personally would like to see the $10,000 in a line item, because either way, it's gonna be affected by tax base, and then at least you're tracking how that money is being spent, rather than just taking it out of the fund and then showing annual appropriations the next year as $10,000.
Right, it washes out either way.
Right, it's just tracked better if you have a line item for consultants.
And that's been one of the puzzles that I have tried to wrestle through in the last month, is to go through all the flash drive, all the information, and try to figure out how things function. It's very disjointed, and so in trying to get a better understanding of budget, of processes, all of that would be important, so that the next person doesn't have to wrestle with trying to figure this all out.
Sure.
We need clarity in this, and I think tracking it in a line item is prudent, because the next person can go back and say, oh, yes, this is what we spent, this is the agencies that we spent on, this is how the money was used, and that makes more sense for that person trying to build a budget.
We can certainly discuss, I mean, I think it's kind of a, 6 of one, half dozen of the other, how you do it. Does it make sense to maybe just table this until we get that question answered about what we need for easement monitoring? Okay. Everybody okay with that?
So I will come and see you, you tell me a time that works for you, and we can go over this.
It'll have to be Monday, because I have court tomorrow.
I'm in Boston Monday.
Well, why don't you email me, we'll
Okay.
check and figure out
Okay.
our schedules.
Okay.
When we get the information, we'll pop it back on the agenda. Thank you for your hard work. It's like, welcome to being chair and then
Well-
doing a budget.
It's been interesting, I can tell you that.
I imagine so.
I just don't want to see the budget in this critical time where we're working with a $3 million bond, and we don't know what's going to come up.
Sure.
To have the budget eviscerated.
Well, just remember, you've got
I know.
75K in your back pocket, so
Yeah,
you've always got that to
still
work
that
towards the bond.
sense. So next week.
Okay,
Okay.
thank you. Eviscerated might be a slightly
Eviscerated, yes.
strong word when you've got 75K of money in your pocket. All right, we will come back to that when we're ready. Next, we have town administrator.
So I just put this budget together based off of my performance review, which Jen and I did today. So this is COLA and merit, adjusted FICA and MEDI to match. In here, I do have 300 for training. I would like to increase that to 1,000 so I can complete the BET HR certification course. And dues and subscriptions are the same, just to continue my dues with the Municipal Managers of New Hampshire Association.
And this increase in professional training was at my suggestion when I did a review with Karen. She had had a goal 18 months ago to potentially take this HR certification course, this BET course, but it had not been budgeted for. And given that it is still a goal of hers 18 months later, I felt that it was appropriate for us to adjust that budget line. So it sounds like that was going up by 700, and that should be sufficient to cover the cost of that training.
I'm sorry, where's that on the?
That is the professional, the 240 line item under town
He's just gonna get
administrator.
the right budget. The next page after the
After conservation.
conservation budget.
You got it?
300 there is going to 1,000.
So that'll just increase.
The new bottom line is 129,528.
Any questions or concerns about that? I'm taking that as a no.
Yeah, I was making
This
this-
is just
I was
wage
making
adjustment.
the motion so I could hear the total again.
So the adjusted would be 129,528 if we bump that training line slightly.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone like to motion that?
Yeah, I'll make a motion for 129,528.
Great. Is there a second on that?
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
I'm an aye, so that's a pass.
Thank you.
Next, we have finance.
Finance, this adjusts the treasurer and Tamara's position up by the merit and the COLA. I've also kept the line item, in the 115 line is also the $18,000 that's budgeted for bank reconciliations. And then one minor adjustment is the audit expense is going from 13,150 up actually to 16,125. So that's a bottom line of 113,991.
That's the fee we pay our outside auditor to do our yearly
Yes.
audit.
How long has it been since we did that?
We haven't. But the cost to, so when you put it out to bid, they won't just pick it up from where we are. They have to go back and do historical data to reconcile last year's data to what plots have already prepared and then move forward. So that first initial year is always much more expensive than going forward. So we can put it out to bid, it just might not, you might not feel that
The cost savings.
decrease right
Is
away.
there a, like, on the listserv, an idea of what the average town our size pays for?
The
Because it goes by
last-
budget size, right? So whatever,
It does, and the last time they put it out to bid, the only real players was Plodzik and Melanson. And I think Melanson, I don't think they're doing much of anything any longer. But those are the only two big firms that were.
I was just trying to see if, you know,
Yeah.
the 3,000 was unrealistic, or if we're paying, like, it's the comfy thing. We've been with Brentwood, Brentwood likes us, they know it's gonna
Yeah.
cost us more upfront, and they start,
Well, and I think this price has always hovered around this marker since I've been here. I think it was at 16, and then we negotiated a longer-term contract, so they cut it down to stay with them for a few years, because I had gone back to Mike at that time and said, hey, the board wants to go out to bid, what can you do? So they reduced the price by a few $1,000s and kept it level. And then, so it's been at 13,000, I think, for the last 3-year contract.
Okay. Are we up for, like, do we have a current contract with them?
This will be part of the new contract,
The increase to up to 15,000.
for how
to
many years?
16,125. I haven't seen the letter of engagement yet,
What was
so right now
what was
it's
the 125?
16,125. I just need to increase this from 15 to 16.
Oh, it's not 15,000.
Yeah.
It's 16,125. Gotcha, I missed that.
Okay.
Could we go back to them as we have done before and see if they might be able to negotiate with us a little bit for a longer contract? We could certainly ask. I mean, I think we could approve their current amount, but if we can negotiate a bit, sounds like it worked in the past.
It has.
It's always worth a try to see if we can get a lower contract.
Or if they just hold that price for another 3 years.
Another couple of years, yep.
13,000 3 years ago is definitely not 13,000 today.
Right. Right, exactly.
What's the number?
113,991.
And other than that change, it's just wage changes here, right?
Yes,
Any additional hours or just all wage?
just wages.
Any other questions for Karen about this budget?
No.
If not, I'll take a motion for the 113,991.
Yeah, I'll make a motion, 113,991 total.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I'm an aye, so that's a pass. And then you can let us know if you hear back from our auditors. And I think that wraps up our 7 budgets. Do you want to, Karen, just move right down to medical insurance since we have that next in our packet? Sure. And then we'll go back to library.
So our rates for medical insurance for the 24 year is going up 15.6%. So the
Ouch.
increase is based on overall claims volume, increased severity and volume of high dollar claims, cost and utilization of specialty drugs, newly indicated weight loss drugs, and losses within the investment portfolio due to downturns in the financial market. Based off of our current makeup of employees and what I'm predicting them to be electing for the 24 year, we've had a lot of life changes in our department. So we're having babies, we're getting married, we're aging off of our parents' insurance and bringing them on. So that is going to be, if we keep the same insurance plan, it's going to increase the bottom line benefits budget from 408 up to 557.
Could you repeat that, Karen? I'm sorry.
The bottom line will increase from 408 to 557.
So that's a double increase of both just the rate, but also additional covered lives and
Yes.
covered.
Yes.
408 to 557, to give context, you mean
408,000 was the benefits budget for 23.
Okay.
It will go up to 557.
So it's going up
A
150,000.
lot. Yeah,
A
a lot.
Which plan is
So
utilized?
right now, we use the 80/20 plan, which is the second plan option in the column. And then we pay 100% for a single, and then 75% for a 2-person in a family plan of that premium. Then we take those dollars and apply that to the ABSOS plan, which is the third column over. And so any employees that want to elect the ABSOS plan can receive a higher dollar amount towards their premium, and then they're liable for a small dollar difference on the premium plus the deductible. I did price it out to see if we moved and made the SOS plan sort of the town's preferred plan, which has a slightly lower premium. But in order to only cover 75% for a 2-person and for a family plan and keep our singles at 100% coverage, it actually would increase your budget to $595 by taking over the cost of that. So the dollar savings in the premium plus that added deductible outweighs the benefit cost-wise. And then the reduction in the premiums going forward as you increase the deductibles, it never catches up. I did look at these high deductible plans, which are $2,500 per person, $5,000 for a family, but the premiums are almost the same as your traditional HMO, so there's no benefit either way to move towards that direction either.
It just costs your employees more.
It does. The average trend for a municipality and what they're offering towards an employee benefit is trending at about 90%. So we're already on the lower side of our contribution, so I think lowering the contribution or doing anything with the contribution and then reducing the benefit, I think would not be in the best interest of the employees or the town as far as retention is concerned.
So remind me again, so we pay 100% of the premium for anyone who's just single and just insuring themselves. And then what does the 75% apply to?
The 75% is for a two-person or for a family plan.
And how many employees?
All full-time employees are eligible, and all employees that are working 32 hours or more are eligible for a benefit.
How many actual employees is that?
You don't have to answer, Karen. When you quote that sort of the average for municipalities in New Hampshire is 90%, how is that sort of factoring in the single versus the family? So we've got the 100 and we've got the 75. So when you're saying 90, how do I work those numbers out in my head?
There was a question on the listserv that goes through every couple of years around this time of year, and that's the towns are contributing 90% of these costs here towards the couples and for the families.
Okay, so do most towns do 100% for single?
They do. Some of them are sort of trending down to reduce that coverage and offsetting it, so they're staying at that, 88%, 85%
Okay.
there.
And what you're saying is that what we cover the family at 75, some other towns cover that at higher. Higher, so we're on the lower end of normal. But we might be covering slightly more for a single insured person
Yes.
than some other towns.
And going back to the plan, is it a no deductible plan then that everyone is under?
The AB 20 is a no deductible plan. We're generally seeing our single employees on that plan, and then most of the two-person and family are electing a deductible plan.
So
The one over in the next
Yeah.
column, so 1,000.
They have a
4,000.
choice, right?
Yeah.
just go back to that for a second, Paul.
Yeah.
It's a no deductible plan
Right.
unless you have prescriptions. And then it's 3,000, 6,000.
Is the max out of pocket towards
Right.
prescriptions
So-
and copays.
Those are
I,
co-pays.
no, it's a deductible. So I have,
Is it deductible on prescriptions or is it a copay?
It says
Well, it's a copay.
maximum out
So-
of pocket.
you have a tiered system, but say you're on a drug that's expensive.
Right.
You could pay $6,000 a year towards that drug. So the plan I have at work is a $500, $1,000 deductible plan, which they create as, it's a low deductible plan. But my problem is prescriptions. I max out my $3,000 per person prescription plan because of my situation. So even though it looks like my deductible is 500, 1,000, you also have to look at the prescriptions, which in this plan is 3,000, 6,000. So there is a possibility of an employee paying $3,000 out-of-pocket expense a year, plus whatever doctor visits are.
Karen,
Yeah,
did you look at it at all in terms of if we pull that single coverage down a little bit from 100, how much of a difference that would make? Like, if, let's say we dropped it to 90, like, some other towns, how much of a difference approximately might that make?
That I'm not sure. I was hesitant to reduce any coverage for the single.
No, I get
employees,
it.
So I didn't
I get it.
really evaluate that option.
Okay.
And when you said you were looking at higher deductible plans, like, and what would be the difference, for example, if, like, you just went to the third column plan instead of the second? And I realize there's a deductible there of 1,000.
So the third column plan to pay the premium at 100% for a single person, and then to cover up to $1,000 towards their deductible, and then only offering 75% for the two-person or for the family, actually increases your bottom line budget by $40,000. Because your budget, you might not expend that $1,000 per single person election, but you need to budget for it in case you need to reimburse those expenses.
And just explain to me, why would you be covering the $1,000 deductible?
Because their coverage, they don't have a deductible on the plan that they elect now, and they're covered at 100% coverage. So moving towards changing plan offerings and making that a preferred plan, I budgeted towards keeping that deductible paid for the single person.
Technically, if you give somebody a 4% raise and then charge them $5,000 for healthcare, they just took a 10% decrease. in
Right,
No, I
right.
understand.
It's a really
but,
tough
yeah,
situation.
It's a tough situations, because we're, getting banged, by, I mean, it happens to me in my business.
No,
you know.
I totally get it, but you
It's
can't,
rough.
say we're gonna give our employers raises and then,
Give them huge deductibles. What would your suggestion be to this thorny problem that we have here?
My suggestion is it's an expensive cost of business and to maintain status quo.
I know we talk about this every year, but if we,
It's painful, but it is what it is. We don't
Yeah,
control those numbers.
the grapevine has it, Health Trust went with most all members with a 15%. I don't know what, Health,
Interlocal trust.
Interlocal Trust was. But
Which is what?
the other company in New Hampshire that offers health insurance, so
Yes.
municipalities.
Most people use Health Trust, right?
Most people do, so Health Trust offers Anthem products and Interlocal Trust, they work
Harvard-
with
Harvard
Harvard Pilgrim. And we've looked at like coupling with and trying to mix our pool with the school's pool, but because they're on a fiscal year and we're on a calendar year, one of us is going to be estimating budget increases for 6 months out of the year, which doesn't
Right.
make sense either.
So do we go through a broker for getting these,
We don't, we're part of a pool, so every municipality with 50 or less employees are part of this pool.
What was our increase last year? It wasn't that
It
high.
was 11%.
11,
last year.
yeah, I thought it was lower than 15. 15.6, it definitely hurts, but
The year prior, I think there was a small decrease, that was the coming out of COVID, there was a decrease because
That's
claims were
right.
low.
that's right, yeah.
This is COVID catch-up.
Sure. Yeah, I think this is being seen in a lot of areas, not just here.
this sounds like more though than, more than 15%.
So the bottom line is gonna go up about 35%,
Yeah.
but 15% of that is the rate change, the rest of it is life changes on our employees, for our employees.
Spouses, children, we're adding more lives to the plans.
Do you have some sort of estimate as to how many more are being added?
I do, that's how I came up with
She
these
knows
numbers.
exactly how many are being added.
And I ask them every year, like as we approach this time of year, anyone getting married, anyone planning to have a baby, anyone planning to get a divorce? So that we can budget for those things.
It's rough conversations with Karen. So this is painful. I'm not sure there's a whole heck of a lot we can do about it. No one likes to see this part of this budget go up this much. But I think to your point, if we were to make drastic changes here, we would just be offering less coverage for our employees and basically taking away some benefits we have historically given and that other towns give, and it's gonna put us in a tough situation. It's not a fun decision, but I think it's kind of a fixed cost that we're stuck with.
In some sense. I mean, I agree in some sense. I don't agree in.
Sure. Yeah, I'd be
in
happy
another
to hear.
sense. Because, to the extent that we're adding, people, that gives, folks that added, benefit. So, I mean, it does provide additional coverage. I mean, I don't know, in my business, I might then start considering other, plans that might have a lesser, cost and but does raise the deductible. And I hate to do stuff like that, but when you get hit with, a bill for $150,000, you gotta start looking at, alternatives, and that's what I've done, in my business. And yeah, that does hurt, but, to the extent that you're providing that additional, coverage for people, because you're bringing on more people, as you say, I mean, that's a big benefit.
It is,
So-
but I think to counter that, I think we're in such a competitive employee market. I think and we have a really strong team of employees. And we're already offering a smaller contribution than some of our neighboring communities that may have unions or different benefits that our employees could utilize, and they're choosing to stay here. So I think if we made a big change here, I think that would be to the town's detriment.
Also, if you changed everybody onto a deductible plan and started charging single covered people a deductible, you'd essentially be charging them for the fact that some of their partners have had children or gotten married. So, it would be sharing, it would be transmitting that cost onto everybody, including the single covered people. So
That's true.
it's-
That's part of being in the insurance. plan.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
Yep, no, I hear ya. That's what you'd be
Yeah.
doing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, yeah.
Russ, any thoughts on this?
I think it's always, that's always the debate over, how you would run a business, which is a very valid way of coming at it. Obviously it's not a business, it's government. I think that employees, by and large, they know that government employees probably gonna mean they're gonna make less than other places. And so a lot of times the benefits help to make up for that in some ways for some people. I mean, when I was young and single, I didn't even think about it. But, so I think someone said it's the cost of doing business, or just the cost of people having life changes. I think that's understandable. Of course, it's a huge number, but I appreciate the explanation and the rationale, so, I support it.
Andy, any other thoughts?
No thoughts.
Anyone interested in making any motions?
I'll make a motion.
Do we have a budget for that yet? Or is it just informational right now?
We would basically be making a motion to either stay with our same plan or,
I would prefer you to make a motion to stay with the preferred plan. I mean, I have a budget, but I just want to make sure that everything is buttoned up before I present it.
so do you want us just to make a directional vote tonight about whether we want to change plans?
Or maintain.
Keep on the same plan? Okay. Would you like to craft your motion?
A move we stay with status quo on plan selection.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Reluctantly.
Reluctant aye, I'll take a reluctant aye.
I would say thank you.
It hurts. And I'm an aye, so we'll pass that. Tough, hopefully next year we won't be seeing such a big increase. I know, don't hold your breath though, when it comes to health insurance.
We just need to go to the Comcast option.
What's that?
Yeah. Every 3 years you switch between
Yeah.
providers.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
It's an accounting nightmare, but
Next, we have the library folks to come back with their follow-up request for the amphitheater. Hello.
Oh, sure.
I ate plan already.
Wow.
Just a couple.
Oh, no. Russ, you have a problem.
I have some Halloween candy still.
thank you. It's because he doesn't get to eat supper before he gets
Did you
here.
not eat?
He's commuting.
You're whispering
good.
that I was screwed or something.
Yeah.
All
Well,
right.
just to put it in perspective, the 2 full-time library employees do not take insurance, so we get $2,000 back in our pay for the year.
Yeah, some of our employees don't even.
So you're
do that
saving some
insurance.
really good money there. That
They
helps.
don't, as a option?
We
You
have
can
the
choose not to
option,
take
yes.
our insurance, yeah.
But we don't, but
There are a few
both of
people who
our
don't.
husbands
Janice,
carry
what
our
you got?
insurance,
Oh,
so
I
we
see.
don't need to use
Yep,
that.
there are a few people who don't. The young
So-
single people mostly do.
Yeah.
Who age off their parents' insurance.
Right.
They
And it
stay
has
on
to be
that as long
available
as
to
possible.
us, because if
Right.
something happened, but.
Right, of course.
So
Just
thanks
to
for coming
see.
back to us. We had
Thank
talked
you.
about last week your preliminary numbers, but then once we realized that sort of accounting error of the
Yeah.
budgeting, whatever that was, the planning money, you guys were gonna come back to us after kind of massaging things a little bit. So let us
Yeah.
know what you've got.
All right, did I send this to you?
Do you want me to make photocopies?
Yes, please.
That would be great.
Sorry, I
That's
did mean
okay.
to send it. It's been a very busy week.
We need my copy of it, and we can.
Okay.
You want to take a, yeah,
2 minutes.
okay, we're gonna take a 2-minute recess
Okay.
for photocopying and bathroom usage.
All right.
You feel like you're sitting in one of the kids' chairs at the children library?
I do. I said I feel like a little
Very
kid.
low, very low.
You should see me when I have to sit in those chairs. My knees are up to my ears. How are you, Tamara?
I'm all right, how are
Yeah.
you?
Good. Trying to button up loose ends and move forward.
Well, I didn't bring mine up.
Yeah, they're gonna take a break anyway.
Yeah.
Although at this point, I could probably talk about it without the appeal.
So many times.
Yeah. I feel like a little kid in this chair.
I know, it's so I may have it like that.
Plus, plan changes.
I know, that is kind of awful,
It
isn't it?
is.
But you're over a barrel, I mean. So, so there
Well, I mean, realistically, if proven health benefit in the long run.
From what?
The kitchen drawer. It gave me a splinter.
Uh-oh. Did I make you get a splinter? I mean, a paper cut? I got one of those today, too. But it was on plastic, you know?
Oh,
Yeah.
that's the worst.
Yeah, I like let out a yelp.
Those bleed a lot too.
Yeah, well, it actually didn't cut the skin, but it felt like it did. It hurt.
All right, now we lost Paul, so as soon
Yeah.
as he's back, we'll get started again.
No worries. I'll just take a little nap. You coming to look club this week?
Yes, I am too. I'll go and, tomorrow, potentially. I'm gonna forget that, so if I do, I have it written down, but just, my mind is like, I don't wanna go.
I called today to reinforce. I'm like, yes, we're doing this, we're getting over it. Getting it over with. She's so fancy.
Are you jealous?
Because it's close to home.
Oh, okay. Where she got it?
And it's hard on the top.
Yep.
It's not to the point of being able to walk over yet, but I do honestly help them.
Yeah, she's good. And she just, I mean, she walked in here just fine.
All right, we will resume session. And we have the photocopies here, so take it away.
All right, so if you look at the other funding sources below, I crossed out the warrant article, 50,000. We are going to remove 31,335 from our ad alternates. We anticipate being able to encumber 5,582 from our budget. Could be a little more, won't be less than that. But I can't determine that with 100% certainty at this time. And then we felt that if we could ask for 130,000 from ARPA funds, which is what we originally had looked at, that would bring us to our total cost of $373,880.
Just double checking our math here.
Oh, come on.
just in case.
No,
I
it's,
know.
please do,
You know,
because
Look at Paul.
just in
Paul's
case.
like, let me get my calculator.
We're so, we can't apologize enough for
I
that.
know,
We
that
were
was-
just so concentrated on how much money we had for the project, and then when the contractor came through, we were like, score, that's the right amount.
So the 373,880 is before you take the 31,000 out, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, that's why the numbers, because the numbers weren't adding up in my head.
Yes.
But it's not really 373,880. It's that minus the 31,335 that you're taking out of sort of
Correct.
extra. So it actually drops it down to 342,545.
Right.
So those were those
Yep.
were ad alternates, the.
Yep.
Yeah, no, I should have taken it out of
Screen
the
number
bottom
again,
line,
Jen?
that's,
The
that's.
screen around.
342,545 is what it will end up expending, so then we'll just make sure that all of this adds up. So if you subtract out the 156,963 that was charitable, you subtract out the 50 from impact fees, and then you subtract out the encumbrance.
And I will explain the GoFundMe momentarily.
Yep.
50. Okay. Okay?
So the GoFundMe, when I originally did up the paperwork, I was looking at the total earned by GoFundMe. Then I went back and looked at the check that was deposited and realized that I had forgotten about the fee. GoFundMe charges a fee. So we were 147 short on that. So the money that we will be presenting at public hearing next week is going to be off by that amount for that reason. So thank you, for Paul, for finding the other error, because it did make me go back and really look with an eagle eye.
So the 156,963 is the amount that we will accept at a public hearing next week, right?
Yes.
Next week.
And I'm in possession of all the funds.
And can you give us sort of a little bit of a summary of what kind of ad alternates are we talking about?
Yeah, so the ones that we removed, the ones that we left are the lights. We
Great.
felt those were really important to keep in there.
They had put in the conduits and all the pre-work for it, but hadn't put the light poles in, and we thought we should stick with those,
Right.
so.
As we will be asking staff to park in the back so that the public can have the front entrance. And so it's gonna get dark later at night, especially this time of year. But we did take out things like, there was an enclosure for the dumpster. There were some plastic type, like handrail type things for the
It was a
walkway.
decorative chain.
It was a decorative
Decorative,
piece,
right.
so we took that out. We took out the removal of a small wooden wall that's on the other side of our property. We were taking it out to allow for more snow plowability space for snow. But we just can't do that. And there is another move that likely will give Wayne the space he needs to put the snow back there. And we removed, the bench. Thankfully, the community has been bringing in plastic now for several years, and we have actually earned several benches. We did give one to cemetery. We allowed the school to have, they raised money for two, and we now have two. So, and we're still going, so.
And to Liz Faria's point, if, the public is interested in helping support some of these kind of beautifying measures, benches, covering the dumpster,
Right.
things like that, that's things that people are more than welcome to donate to you
Yes.
for.
Right.
And those are things we will probably fundraise for later on in
Sure.
terms of, not necessarily us, but our friends group. Things like cushions because the seating is hard. Things like sunshades, so we can
Sure.
deal with some of those elements that are.
Before
kind
our
of the
trees
con-
get big,
Yeah, so those are things that we had planned originally to go for. And so this is not hurting us too much. I mean, it's doable.
Right. And to Liz's point, when you guys brought this to town meeting, you had asked the community for $200,000. And the main reason it was tabled is we just didn't have these numbers yet.
Right.
So now we have them, and now it's up to this board to, I think we probably need two separate votes. One, to move forward with the trimmers bid with these ad alternates removed, and the other for this board to agree to use ARPA in this amount of $130,000.
Yes,
Questions,
please.
concerns, issues for the library crew about this?
So is this a meeting for tonight or next week?
We presented this last week.
Right.
I think given that we haven't made any substantive changes other than tweaking it to make the numbers work out, we did not hear any public comment by email or phone. And then we just had Liz's public comment here, so I think we wanted to leave it open for a week to allow the public to weigh in. I personally feel that we are at that point that we could vote. If you don't agree, we could bump it, but I don't think we've had substantive changes.
I think we are. I thought I had heard.
So next week
maybe
is
I
a public
misheard.
Oh, next
hearing
week
to
is the
accept
second part.
funds.
Right.
Say it again?
Yes.
Next week is a public hearing to accept funds, because
first
that
part.
147,000 was unanticipated revenue.
I see.
We have to
Have a meeting to
have
accept it.
basically open a meeting to say, does anybody have any questions or concerns? And then, once there are none, we close it and accept the money.
Okay. So I'm assuming this is all contingent upon us accepting the funds.
Right.
Yes.
Yes, because they need that $156,000 that
Right.
they fundraised.
And we would like to get this going as soon as possible too, to get trimmers to stock, because they do intend to start work as soon as they're authorized to move it.
Great. Okay. Any other questions?
No questions. I just, you've done a great job, and the idea of, ARPA funds at, at that level to, in combination with what's been raised, I mean, it's just, it's a total win-win.
Yep.
So I praise the job done, and I'm supportive of it. I guess we have to technically throw that contingency in, right, for next, upon,
Sure.
accepting, things next week. So I don't know how you phrase that in a motion, but I can think about it.
Can I ask a question to that? And thank you very much for that comment. But on the public hearing, what would be a situation where maybe the money would not be accepted? Like, has that ever happened, or what is that? I guess I don't really understand that
So I
whole
think
process.
The way I understand it, even if there's public disdain for it, it's still up to the 5 members of the board whether we accept it or not.
Okay,
I think it was probably intended to be an opportunity for the public to come and say, I really don't think the town should take this money for X, Y, Z reasons because of this perceptual, moral, to give the town a voice. Like, do we
Right.
really want to bring this money into our town, or do we feel like this is the right type of money to bring into our town? I personally can't imagine anyone saying no to someone wanting to name an amphitheater after their deceased wife, or people who gave out of their own pocket. So I would not anticipate you would have any difficulty. It's essentially a formality as required by law.
I think the issue would be if you had a developer that gave you 500,000.
Sure.
gotcha.
With like
So
a-
conflict of interest kind
Right,
of
sure.
situation.
There may be an ethical
Yeah.
question.
Like
Right.
some guy from Rhode Island,
There could be questions about some sources of funding that people in town might
Right.
not feel comfortable with.
Right,
I really don't think this will fall into that category.
okay. I was just curious, because I couldn't find anything on the background of that.
So Paul, do you want to craft that into a motion to
Well,
accept
yeah,
the trimmer's
I-
bid?
yeah, I would
Fine.
move to accept the trimmer's bid at, as I understand it, $342,545 with an allocation of ARPA funds at $130,000 and contingent upon the acceptance of the $156,963 at next week's meeting.
Somebody's hand's gonna be tied down the other end of the table.
I know, right? That was a long motion. Did you want
Thankfully,
to
you
add
have this
something to that? I heard you.
So I was gonna originally say that if you wanted 2 different motions, we probably should move the ARPA funds first and then accept, but he
Does
rolled
anyone
it
have
all
a problem with
together.
it all being rolled in?
Nope.
Do you have a problem with being rolled together? No. Okay, so we have a motion on the table for that. Any seconds?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And I'm an aye, and Paul's an aye. So congratulations, and
Thank
it's a
you.
great testament that The amount of money that we're giving from ARPA is less than what you got through fundraising and donations, so obviously we're happy, and we're very happy that the liability of that dangerous location is going to be taken care of finally.
You and
So
me both.
congratulations on
It'd be
your
beautified.
very hard work.
And please stop by and check
And
out
useful.
our progress too, it will be really
We're
fun.
so happy
Yeah.
to see it move
Yeah.
forward.
And we'll have a big ribbon cutting
Great.
ceremony when it's
Awesome.
all said and done. So-
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Construction helmets or
Yeah, no construction helmets needed.
Okay, good.
Maybe
So
your
We
good.
shall
guitar.
see, I don't know.
You might be doing a concert for
you
us,
should
Russ.
get one with the director on it.
Oh, I need that. Oh, yeah, that would be fun.
So keep us posted, and we will have the
Alright.
hearing next week.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Karen, now that this is in the town's hands, will you write the letter to Trimmers? Did you send that?
I sent that stuff. We can talk
Yeah.
tomorrow.
Okay. Yeah, you can talk to Karen offline about the next steps. That concludes our discussion action items. We'll turn over to regular business, and Andy usually goes first, and he's on conservation, so we will briefly talk about any dam updates. I know we have an email in our mail for this week from Conservation Committee to the Select Board, and I will turn it over to you, Andy.
Well, since the chair's here, do we wanna just
We
bring
can
Becky
invite
up?
her back up, sure.
Come on down.
I don't have that copy in front of me, but
We've
I'll
got
try
it
to
here.
paraphrase it.
Give him the, I think it's in the mail. That's it, right here.
This chair is awful.
Very low.
Okay. So this was sent to Karen on Monday for today's meeting. I'm going to read it out loud so that the audience can hear. Following the discussion at the Select Board meeting November 6 regarding the application by Exeter for a grant from NOAA to remove Pickpocket Dam, the Conservation Commission met November 7 and discussed Pickpocket Dam and its potential removal. After a lengthy discussion and comments from the commission members and a number of residents in attendance, including a summary review by a town resident of actions taken to date by state and local agencies on this matter, a consensus was formed. We did invite Robert Spann to speak, and he did a similar presentation that he did to the Select Board the day before. So he gave us all the background information. A motion was proposed and seconded and approved unanimously to recommend that the Select Board, 1, obtain a legal opinion from Town Council detailing Brentwood's rights and options regarding this matter. 2, contact New Hampshire DES Wetlands Bureau to see whether it participated in the dam evaluation process. 3, obtain all information and data available regarding the process and steps which must be followed for removal of an existing dam, and I think Robert Spann has asked for as much information. Send a letter to Exeter prior to 11/16/2023 expressing Brentwood's concerns and reservations about proceeding with dam removal. The River Advisory Committee meets on the 16th at the town office. I can't remember the name of the building, at 3 o'clock. So I know a number of residents have contacted me, and I said, if you want to go, please do go and express your concerns. But I'm wondering about these 4 points, what the Select Board how the Select Board plans to act. So Karen, you said you had done a little bit on the DES.
Can you give us any updates that you
Yeah.
have?
I don't have any substantive updates. I have a call into town council. I also have a call into Jim Weber and Steve Doyen from DES. They work in dam safety and the inspection section. I have a call into Russ Dean for an update on the status of their study, but I don't have any new information other than
I think they've suspended their study. They've interrupted it. It's
Russ was supposed to
stopped.
have a meeting with Jennifer Berry, the DPW director for
Okay.
the town of Exeter last
Okay.
week, and then was to provide me with an update, but I haven't heard anything more.
And Robert said if you're interested in someone to draft a letter, he has a letter he's already drafted that he's welcome to, he would like to share with you if that's possible. He doesn't know if it should come from the board, as we've requested, or if it should be individuals sending letters. So what is your thought on the board writing to Exeter? You talked a little bit about it last
Yeah.
week.
What does the board feel would make the most sense for us to do as a board?
So, my opinion would be, by all means, many residents that wanna send letters to have, they should do it on their own. We should just say that before any action is taken, that our residents should be consulted about the impact of any dam removal.
So if the grant comes through, request that before any actions are taken on the grant that Brentwood
Can you
residents.
share what you, Andy and I
Yeah.
had kind of been chit-chatting about this. Can you share kind of what you told me about the last dam removal and that even after the decision was made, there was a whole process of study that occurred?
Yeah, so Mr. Stevens was at the Conservation Committee meeting, said he followed the Great Dam removal, and that prior to the removal, there was required studies done, and that town of Exeter actually had to study the effect of the dam removal all the way up to the Pickpocket Dam. So there was a great deal of studies and work and put in before the dam could actually be removed. It wasn't just, you got the grant, go ahead and put a stick of dynamite there and get rid of it. It was, you get the grant, but
Yeah.
part of that grant is having to do all this work in order to, did I pretty much summarize that pretty well?
Very correct. I mean, I started following this procedure because let's just start talking about, of course, the Great Dam in downtown Exeter more than a decade ago. But back in 2016, they started to talk about the Pickpocket Dam removal. And I mentioned to a couple of people that if you just Google town of Exeter Pickpocket Dam, you can follow all of the studies. They spent a horrendous amount of money in professional engineering fees between 2016 and present to evaluate not only removing the dam, but the different remediation options forward. And I think the dam, removal is $500 to $1 million less expensive than remediation. Of course, my point was in remediation, if you remediate it and fix it, it's an ongoing cost to the town to maintain that over a period of time. So, that's what I was talking about. But yes, all the studies, the grant actually provides the funding for all of these studies, and it goes to historical, to scours. I mean, there's about 10 different studies that are professionally done. But Exeter, in the meantime, between 2016 now, I forget the name of the engineering
Right.
firm, but they've spent, I don't know how many, I'm told, tens of thousands of dollars in engineering costs to determine that. So it wasn't like a week ago they filed a grant, filed for the grant. I mean, they've been preparing this since, again, 2016. You can read on the website the reports of all those different studies that went along.
As far as I know, in the grant itself, there is no funding for any remediation or further study upstream of the dam in Brentwood.
Well, all
When I
can
read
say
the
is
grant.
When the Great Dam in downtown Exeter was taken out, the study included all the way up to Pickpocket.
Right,
Yeah.
right, and that's all Exeter property. We're a different, we're obviously a different town, and I don't read anything in there about any involvement with Brentwood.
I think it's probably some excellent questions to
Yes.
pose to that group the
Yes.
day after tomorrow.
Yeah.
Is what if any studies
Yes.
will be done on the impact on
Yes.
Brentwood and when and how?
Yes, because there's all sorts of funding for downstream from the dam for landowners to get remediation on the banks, plantings, invasive species, clearing the channel, and none of that is applied upstream of the
And I'm
dam.
not an expert on it, but at the time, they had to consider, part of the grant process was they had to consider upstream to the extent that the water level would be affected upstream.
Hague Road.
Well, in
That's
this
what they're
case, it
saying,
very well
yeah.
would, it's not the thing. Certainly Brentwood wanted to have total control. I'm sure the town of Exeter, for $1, maybe.
Oh, would sell us the dam, I'm
I'm
sure.
sure they would.
I'm sure they would. But I like your questions, that we should ask those questions about what accommodations or actions are they
Sort of
going
what's
to
the
take
plan,
upstream.
yeah,
Yes.
let's say they get
Yeah.
this grant, what would that look like for the residents of Brentwood? And I think that's sort of what you're saying.
Yes.
Yeah.
This board would like to say, to advocate for our townspeople,
Yeah.
can we please get a clear understanding of what the process will be on how our, taxpayers will be impacted by this process?
So will the select board draft that letter?
I think we can, or we certainly be happy to look at Mr. Span's
Okay.
drafted one. I think we want to stay out of any legality
Yes,
issues at
at
this
this
point
point.
until we know if there is even anything there. But I think just sort of expressing that we very much would like to
Yeah.
advocate for our town and our residents to know
Yeah.
how this is going to play out would be.
Any of you want to be there on the 16th?
I was planning on
Different
being
one.
there.
Yeah.
I know you're planning on
Yeah.
being there.
Mhm.
I've heard from multiple people
Okay.
who are planning on being
Okay.
there.
And I think there's an arm raised here. I'm sorry, I'm not.
Yeah, Eric, do you want to comment?
Yeah, just on the discussion we were just having, again, say that this is already their predefined choice.
Right.
And I think that's the part that I think is the more difficult, because the grant application they submitted does state that there will be 4 public information sessions or whatever, but if the decision's already been made,
Yeah.
then it's a foregone conclusion. And again, if they come to the same conclusion, fine, but, you know, it feels as though the whole process, and I agree with what Becky was saying about, you know, not just engaging us, you know, so that we can have our say, but also to talk about like the actual process of what could be done, you know, if that's the decision they ultimately make.
Paul, what you say?
Well, I was gonna say that as part of a letter, I think, you know, without getting into like the legalities of whether or not, you know, legal notice was properly provided, I mean, I think we can at least say that that we have concerns with respect to the process and how the town and its residents will be impacted moving forward, and that we would expect that we be provided information moving forward, that we could assess and then decide our options as a town.
Sure.
So, I'd be happy to help, or I can take a look, Karen, when you get a draft.
And we will probably learn more on Thursday. when we go.
So assuming so, yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Anything else you need from us?
Anybody,
this-
so I'm hearing like general agreement to send a letter. Russ, are you okay with that?
Yeah, for a lot of the reasons that were stated, I think, I think Andy's tone at the outset was more where I'm at, but of course, it's, you know, I'm happy to review it along with the rest of the board. And
I think to Karen's point last week, we have to have a respectful communication with them while also expressing that we have concerns for our residents. You know, we don't want to create a huge problem between the two towns, but at the same point, we do want to try to advocate for our residents and for the people who live along the river.
Okay.
all right,
Sounds good?
can I ask Becky
Sure.
something else related to the Conservation Commission?
Sure, I don't know if there were any other updates.
Yes. So, Becky took on the daunting task of checking with all the alternates.
Oh, great, yep.
Some that haven't made a meeting since I joined the board, and they've all asked to remain on as alternates. So I think after we get through budget process, it should be up to this board to maybe create some type of policy of what the expectations of an alternate are. And even a board member, at what point can we remove a member from a board, appointed board? Obviously you couldn't remove an elected official. But there should be some process which we don't have.
Right.
There should be some standard that we don't have. So you can't hold somebody to a standard if it doesn't exist. So,
So that would apply to any committee that is appointed versus elected,
yes.
that the select board could make that mandatory for attendance or participation or something, yeah.
Yeah, we'll have to kind of talk it out, what we think
Yeah.
makes the most sense.
Yeah.
But there's gotta be some type of, like,
Base expectation.
right. I mean, why do you wanna be on a board if you can't attend a meeting?
Right,
Mhm.
it's a valid question. I think I did see posted on the web that we had opened up the call for alternates. Did I see that it was for 2?
Yeah, 'cause there's
Alternates?
one alternate who really wants to, but right now there's a conflict with employment.
Oh, okay, so one alternate is stepping back.
We only have 4 now.
Okay,
We had 5. When I moved up from alternate to full member, that opened one full
One.
spot, yes.
okay,
And in conversation with those 4, one has a business conflict right now,
okay.
but would really like to be involved. So I
So
need
did
to
we
speak to that
open a
person
spot
yet.
for that?
They haven't formally resigned, but we had posted for 2 at that
Yeah.
time.
Oh, okay, in
Yeah, just in case,
anticipation that that
to
person may
see-
resign.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And the other 3 voiced that they would like to continue,
Yes.
but haven't had stable attendance.
Correct.
Okay,
right. Okay.
Right.
Okay.
Well, I appreciate that, that we need to perhaps make, or we need to consider making rules, more specific rules or what have you. It does seem to me that it's more of a common sense government approach to say that if you're an alternate and you haven't shown up for how many meetings, roughly?
Well, a month since March, so April, May, June,
7,
July,
8, yeah.
August,
Right.
September, 6.
So, on the one hand, the committee, perhaps can police itself adequately to, again, to appeal to common sense, or the select board can take care of it. But this idea that, the Conservation Commission has had organizational issues now for a while. And I'm kind of getting impatient with the time it's taking, and I'm still feeling like, again, common sense should prevail. So if we have people not showing up, then we should back them.
I think the problem is there's no process.
Right.
You need to have,
We have an appointment process, but not a de-appointment process.
until their
Well,
term runs out.
Yeah,
And just to back up you a little bit, I think Becky's done an amazing job in the last month of trying to
well,
get
you don't
the
need to
board
back me
organized.
up. I don't need to back up.
No, I'm just saying, you were concerned about the,
Yeah, I wasn't, obviously Becky just took over, right? But I'm concerned about the issue that I just talked about. I'm also hearing that there's some discussion about having appointment votes, or maybe that's not the right term, in non-public. Is that,
That is the way communications happened in non-public, when those positions were open, in non-public, except for one candidate who wanted it to be public.
Are we talking about at this board level? We changed our policies at this board level to
Right.
have it be in public.
no, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I'm,
So that change happened after the communications meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, we made that change just a month or two ago on
I
policy
must have missed
suggestion.
that. I must have missed
Yeah,
that.
we have
Okay.
decided, we told the council, who advised it would be better for us to do as much of appointment in
Yeah.
public as possible, and
Okay.
the board voted unanimously
Okay.
to do so.
so naturally, I agree that Becky deserves time. She's new, right? I just don't want to see some of the same mistakes made.
Sure.
And some of the same sort of dysfunction feel to it. I really feel like this Conservation Commission, this change in approach needs to pick up a little speed overall, that's my opinion.
Yeah, I think it's headed in a good direction. I think to your point, I think personally, I'm a little frustrated that if there's alternates to his common sense point, if you haven't been able to come for 6, 7, 8 months,
Mhm.
I'm surprised some people didn't bow out. But that's up to them, and so maybe that's why we need rules and regulations.
Yeah, working with a number of boards, that has been an issue with some
Sure.
boards, and you deal with it, and I think
How many
my,
boards are you
my
on?
attempt at this point to have conversations and relationships with the alternates
Yeah.
will help to a great
Sure.
degree.
Yeah.
So I think that's important, that personal contact and those relationships.
How many boards are you on, Becky? You're on
Right now,
A couple.
Communications Committee,
Phew, you're just a busy lady.
Communications, Conservation, and Historical Society.
Historical
And
Society,
regional associations.
and the Commission.
Regional, yeah, well, that's
Historical's
once a year.
not a
That's
town
once a
board.
year.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
not town
That's
board.
not
More
town,
the
yeah.
Committee, what is it? What's the other one? The organizational one?
Regional
Regional
Association, the
associations.
charitable.
Okay.
My communications term ends in June, I believe. I have a one-year term, so that drops off.
Certainly let us know if your ongoing conversations with any of those
Yeah.
alternates, come to a
Yeah.
different result.
Yeah.
Because if it just doesn't work for their schedule,
Yeah, no, I
they're
understand
welcome
that.
to go off and
I
come back
understand
on
that.
sometime in the
I
future.
understand that.
But
I
if
also
we're at an impasse, then we'll need some board guidance.
I also understand that in the conservation manual for the state organization, you can have volunteers who may not be appointed alternates, but who can serve specific tasks and roles. sort of ad hoc committees, subcommittees that can work on particular tasks. And that may be a place for this person who's dealing with this right now.
Gotcha.
So
Not an official
I
alternate.
think it's those conversations and really having a candid conversation with that person.
Great.
Okay?
Okay, sounds good.
Thank you, Andy. Do
Thank
you need
you.
your copy back, or?
We'll take that back, yeah,
Okay,
it's in
very
our
good.
mail.
Pass it on there.
Do you want to maybe take a look at Robert's letter, and we can touch base about just getting something, and I can either, I'm going to the meeting, I can hand deliver it. I mean, we're obviously in a time crunch, but I think we can make sure it gets with us on Thursday.
And just back to that, Russ, I didn't mean back you up, I meant back up to your conversation.
Backed up the bus over.
Yeah,
Beep, beep. Anything else that you had, Andy?
I'm good.
Russ?
Communications Committee, again, we have members here in the audience who may want to speak up, but I know Karen and I were on a email thread regarding the website, and so I believe that the board will see a link to the prototype. Is that what we call it?
Sounds official.
We
Prototype.
want to present you with the website at next week's meeting.
Great.
And then we'll send you out the link after the meeting so that
Oh,
you
the link
can.
after the meeting.
Well, right, so you want the big reveal during the meeting, and then you
Okay.
can
All
have
right,
the
we'll
link so
take
that
it.
you
Well-
can do a deep dive.
And I just want to say, Karen did an excellent job already of reviewing, and I mean, she doesn't need me to tell her that, but I'm telling you guys that she did an excellent job, real thorough job of picking out some things that, you know, I don't think there's anything major, but I mean, websites are difficult,
Yeah, and I hope the
Especially for
community will have a little
government-
patience with us when it first
especially
goes
for a
up.
government organization.
Yeah.
Websites are very difficult
Yeah.
to stand up.
Great.
Can we get searchlights and maybe some confetti?
Daphne's martini card.
Library, I suppose, you know, we're good.
Yep.
Energy, I don't have my notes. for that.
Tomorrow night at 6.
Tomorrow night at 6 here, another public hearing. It's the same presentation, just another opportunity for the public to attend, learn, and comment.
Is that being streamed?
It was.
The first one was streamed.
So we
The
can,
first one was streamed.
okay.
So yes, I can.
Paul?
We had our week off of planning boards, unless there's anything to report, gents? Nope. We're good. Okay.
In terms of school, according to Daphne, with some fanfare, we will have the primary announced tomorrow, which may or may not be January 23rd, with the board's permission. After that is released, I will communicate with the chair of the school board to let them know that that has been made official and to continue our ongoing request of the school to consider allowing us to hold the primary on the school grounds. And then we shall see. It's getting tighter and tighter because it will be their December meeting by the time this is decided, so I don't know how that will go, but if no one is opposed, I will pass that request on once the date is confirmed.
Is that gonna make us the first primary?
We have, by statutorily, we have to be, right? It's in New Hampshire state law.
That's what
Yep.
I'm thinking.
Yep,
Okay,
that's been the rub there.
all right.
Okay. I think that was all that I had. This is all good. We don't have non-public. Any other board business before we finish up tonight? Sure.
I know I'm not supposed to, but the SIP plan, where are we at with that?
We are, I mean, I don't know, is planning board sort of bringing that forward to us, the capital improvement plan? Do we know, have you heard sort of what the official,
I haven't, I know Jillian has a
Rolling
draft
out
of
of
the
that.
plan.
Yep.
Has the planning board officially adopted the
I
plan?
thought we had, hadn't we?
is it official, there's a
Yeah.
final version?
Yeah.
So we
Yeah.
should definitely bring it to this board for discussion. I don't know if
We should.
BudCom has looked at it yet or is gonna be discussing it
I think some members have, but not all.
in an upcoming meeting. Okay, yeah, so we should look at it. So if it's ready, we should put it on next week's agenda. Just for at least a first pass at it.
But it's really, the jurisdiction of the planning board to vote to accept,
Right,
but, I mean,
Right, we're more want to utilize it for budgetary planning purposes, rather, you know, not. That's where my question comes from. Correct, yep,
I appreciate that. Yeah.
great. Any other board business? All right, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, adjourning at 7:45.
Why did I think that energy here is the 6th?
The 16th is the river meeting. Yeah,
The
tomorrow.
first meeting was the 6th.
Oh, you probably had 6 in your head. 6 and 15.
Left my notes at home, so.
I heard the first one went really well, except for, you know, a few folks expressing their